Oh, hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, depending on which part of this beautiful country that you're in. This is the Rebel Roundup, and I am your host, Sheila Gunn Reid, the editor in chief here at Rebel News Network. And there's absolutely nothing happening in the world to talk about this week, so I don't even know why we're having a show. What a wild week. Crazy week, not just in American politics, but also in Canadian politics. There's a last minute cabinet shuffle, crazy things happening at the ethics committee in an unusual emergency sitting of the ethics committee, which was a real cornucopia for the eyes. And then, of course, not just the RNC, so the Republican National Convention, wherein they officially nominated President Donald Trump as their candidate, but an assassination attempt on Donald Trump at a speaking engagement, a rally really, in Pennsylvania. And we were a hair and a flinch, a slight 1 degree head turn, I think, away from not just watching the American state descend into civil war, but quite possibly pushing the world into World War III. I think that's how much we really were on the cusp that night. We watched a miracle unfold on live TV, and I don't think that can be understated enough. I mean, it's fascinating to watch people who have never even uttered the word God in their public persona, outside of maybe to use it in the name in vain, as I unfortunately tend to do sometimes. And I know I get those emails, but talking about just the intervention of God, the hand of God, that night in Pennsylvania. Now, the Republican National Convention, it went ahead because that's Trump, right? That's the same man who shook his fist at a crowd and told them to fight, 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 as we didn't know the full extent of his injuries, right? Like, he could have been hit in the body too, but he was winged in the ear. That man will not be intimidated. He will not be silenced. And he went ahead, and the Republican National Convention went ahead. And so, obviously, biggest thing happening in the world, we deployed journalist Yanky Pollak, who normally works behind the scenes, although some of you may know him from journalism in front of the camera, but he works in another department of the company. And Efron Monsanto, who is our head of video. Those two fellas decided that they're going to go to Milwaukee. We were happy to send them. You were happy to help. And let's show some of the reports from outside of the convention. Security was pretty tight, so the Republican Party let our guys in, but because it was sort of a last minute decision, and all of a sudden security was heightened, our guys didn't get in to the convention facility itself until the very last minute. But there's lots of sights and sounds outside of these conventions, particularly with just how loony the Democrats seem to be these days, like more than usual. But before we get into that, I should tell you what we're doing here, because I just started talking and I didn't tell you. If you're a new viewer to the show, thank you for bearing with me. This used to be a daily show. It's just a weekly show now, not because of ratings, but because there's just so much news out in the world. And we wouldn't want to take, especially best man on the street journalist in the country, David Menzies, off the street to sit in a desk for an hour every single day and talk to me. So I used to be his co-host. Now I'm the host. The show's on Friday. It streams on YouTube. However, YouTube is a censorship platform. As you know, we are completely demonetized over there. We continue to broadcast there because we don't want to abandon the people who prefer to watch us there, but also, if you don't want us there, that's how you get more of us. It's clear that YouTube doesn't want us there. They don't want conservatives there. So we stay a little bit just for spite, right? But if you want to engage in lively conversation and support the show, might I suggest you move over to Rumble or to Odyssey. Both of those are free speech streaming platforms that don't really care about your politics. And I think that's how it should be. I don't care if they agree with me. I just want them to be able to let me disagree with them freely. And that's what Rumble and Odyssey allow. On Rumble, it's called a Rumble Rant. On Odyssey, it's called a Hyper Chat. Those are the paid chats over there. If you want to send a chat, I'll read it on air if it's over the $5 US minimum. However, don't let that be the bar for entry, because frequently we read chats that are below that $5 US minimum, or even free ones. And my apologies for no show last week. I was at the Democracy Fund Student Journalism Conference, helping to cultivate the next generation of independent, freedom-minded journalists, because, you know, the left, they train activists all the time. Those activists end up in J school, and then you get the CBC and bailout media. And we want to do the opposite. We want to help foster young journalists in their careers, give them the tools they need to enter the field and to act as a counterbalance to the mainstream media. You know, the mainstream media's got all the money, but they don't have all the ideas. And so we want to make sure we support the ideas side of journalism, which I was there doing that as someone who trains the young journalists here at Rebel News. All right, let's get into the news. Let's show what the anarchists told Yanky when they showed up at the RNC. And by the way, kudos to the GOP, the Republican Party, for letting these yahoos protest. Because, you know, in a time of heightened security and assassination attempt on the future president of the United States, they had every reason to just say, move along, kookaloos, get out of here. No more assassination attempts. But they believe in free speech. You're the party of free speech. And so the best way to show the Democrats in their natural mindset is to let them talk. And so that's what they did. And we thought, if the GOP is letting them talk, let's go talk to them. And take a listen to what this Antifa kookaloo had to tell our Yanky Pollak.
Yeah, we're here to say fuck Trump, fuck MAGA, the whole agenda, the whole fascist. So we're here also to promote our game. It's called Smash MAGA. It's a free anti-fascist game on Steam where you play as Antifa and you shoot COVID masks on Trump supporters.
And why are you wearing a mask? Is it for your identity?
For protected identity, but also because it's COVID.
And what do you think about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump on Saturday?
It was this close. We could have lived in a timeline where Trump would be dead, and for me, that would have been okay.
You condone political
Politics is inherently violent because, I mean, we're talking about a genocidal war on the Palestinian people. So I don't know why people are saying, oh, it's wrong for people to do political violence. I just don't know what you call bombing innocent civilians. I just don't know why you do it. And Trump's about it, and Biden's about it. So we're here to say, fuck Trump, fuck Biden. Yeah, we're here to say, fuck Trump, fuck Biden.
All right, that's what we're dealing with on the other side here. He says F Biden, but I guarantee you he will vote Democrat if he votes at all. All right. But this is what you get from constant rhetoric saying the MAGA movement is coming to kill you. And so you get political violence. If you are training a generation of oversoyed, overstimulated physical weeps like this person, if you're training them that people disagreeing with you is akin to violence, and allowing them to get away with the blood libel of saying that there is a genocide being committed against trans people or gay people or whatever, then what is, if you are the victim of a genocide, because I guarantee you that guy says that he's on the alphabet people spectrum, what is the violence that you commit against the people that you don't know, if not self-defense, right? That's what we're training these people to do. And by we, I mean not me, but the mainstream media and the left of this world. They basically control the media. That's what they are infecting the young people with. And even still, they blame the right for this. Act of violence after act of violence committed against the right by these weaponized maniacs, radicalized. They're radicalized the same way people end up joining ISIS. except they don't have to go to Syria to do it. They could just go to a local university to join their terrorist movement. But act of violence after act of violence against Republicans, and the Democrats still blamed the Republicans for this. Steve Scalise was shot and nearly killed at a baseball game by a Bernie bro, and we just forget that. Democrat voters burning cities down because of BLM. Just completely forget it. Antifa running rampant. These Hitler Youth 2.0 mobs on the streets of American and Canadian cities, fighting Jews on the lawns of the synagogues, burning our churches. And yet the left says, look at those Republicans, inherently violent, inherently violent. We're not doing the violence. But let me tell you, if you want political violence, you should not incite a civil war with the side that has the physical and I don't want to say, I have to be careful here, but if they want a civil war, they should be careful what they wish for. That's all I have to say. Okay, let's move on. On the flip side, despite these crazy people still just rumbling for violence, something else is happening. It feels like nature's healing. You know what it feels like? Okay, so, and I don't remember this, but I have done a lot of reading on it because I'm a Reagan aficionado, Ronald Reagan aficionado. And when Reagan was shot and he wasn't unable to raise his hand in defiance of the violence the way Trump did. But he went to the window of his hospital room and he waved to the crowd because he needed America to know that everything was okay. It's the same thing as when Queen Elizabeth's father died. She would not get off her plane on the tarmac until somebody brought her appropriate black clothing so that she could signal to her country what they needed to be doing, either mourning or, in Reagan's case, that the country was not being plunged into chaos, that he was okay. But a doctor, there's an anecdote of a doctor saying to Reagan, something along the lines of, there aren't a lot of Republicans in our hospital, but we are all Republicans today. And some of that is happening right now. There are the radicalized people, like the COVID people, who will wear masks until they're dead. And there's no saving those people. They're in some sort of cult. It's like the same reason that people leave a cult once the predicted doomsday never comes, but always at the end, there's that core group of people who end up drinking the Flavor Aid or whatever. But some of that is happening right now where nature's healing a little bit. And there are people that are just visceral, crazy Trump haters. And they are saying, holy heck, that's a leader of a nation. That is the leader of the free world. That's physical and mental strength that we have not seen in a modern leader in a very long time. For example, Facebook guy, Mark Zuckerberg. I don't know if we have his tweet. Kean Simone tweeted it out this morning, basically saying the same thing, like, I cannot believe what we just saw. These are the kind of leaders who lead their people in and then out of war the other side, who can take on anything. Is this a video? Let's show this, if it is.
I've done some stuff personally in the past. I'm not planning on doing that this time. And that includes, not endorsing either of the candidates. Now, look, there's obviously a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world. The historic events over the weekend. And on a personal note, it's, seeing Donald Trump get up after getting shot in the face and pump his fist in the air with the American flag is one of the most badass things I've ever seen in my life. But look, I mean, it's you know, and I think, look, it's at some level as an American, it's like hard to not get kind of emotional about that spirit and that fight. And I think that that's why a lot of people like the guy.
He's not wrong. And I think a lot of more reasonable Democrats are feeling that way right now. They're looking at Joe Biden, who could get knocked down a flight of stairs with a strong wind, who is very clearly in cognitive decline, but also physical decline. He sort of shuffles around like the Frankenstein monster, and he doesn't know who he's talking to. He can't finish a sentence. And everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. And then you look at Donald Trump, gets shot in the head, tells the Secret Service, let me put my shoes on, because that is important. You don't want to be seen as a weak man shuffling down the stairs in your sock feet. He was thrown to the ground by the Secret Service so hard that it knocked his shoes off his feet. And he stood up to tell the crowd everything's going to be okay. It's like that moment of Queen Elizabeth saying, I will not get off this plane until you bring me my black clothes. It rallies a nation, and he's doing it. Let's go to this Tucker Carlson clip, because it is exactly what I'm talking about, where it's no longer about Trump being a Republican, but a leader of a country, of the shining city on the hill.
I watched the video of what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania about 50 times. I think I was one of about 8 billion people around the world who watched it. And the more I watched it, the more it struck me that everything was different after that moment. Everything. This convention is different. The nation is different. The world is different. Donald Trump is different. When he stood up after being shot in the face, bloodied, and put his hand up, I thought at that moment, that was a transformation. This was no longer a man. Well, I think it was divine intervention. But the effect that it had on Donald Trump, he was no longer just a political party's nominee or a former president or a future president. This was the leader of a nation. I
think he's 100% right. And Mark Zuckerberg is indicating the same thing. And I don't think Zuckerberg is alone. There are a lot of people who are either closet Republicans, who are now open, red hat wearing MAGA Republicans. And there are a lot of people who are saying, look, I might not agree with Trump on everything, but that is a man who is so defiant and so physically strong. This is the man we need in a world with Russia rising, China rising, Iran getting prickly. This is the man that we need to lead this nation, to lead the free world. I truly believe that. Tucker hit on something there that I noticed the other night. Maybe we can bring it up. I'm sorry, Olivia, to put you on the spot. When Trump walked out onto the RNC floor, there's something different about him, right? Like, Trump is funny. He's Mr. Dancy Dance. I love his Trump dance. I do. There's a supercut of just him dancing. And I love it. Because he's so funny. And he sort of knows that he's a caricature of himself. So he leans right into it. That's a guy with keen self-awareness. But there was something different about his face. It was really clear that he was sort of stifling emotion as he walked out to that crowd. Look at him with his ear bandaged. He was almost killed. His family almost watched him murdered on live TV. And, somebody very near in physical proximity to him was killed, saving his wife and daughter. And, you can see, he's not like a sad or like an emotional person that way, but he's funny. You know that he is jokey, and when he's outraged, but you can tell he is right there, sort of overwhelmed with emotion to be out there and knowing full well he's going to accept the Republican nomination and thus likely be the next president of the United States. He has changed, I think. I think probably for the better. And I already liked him. So can't wait to see what happens next. Okay. Also, this Republican convention has just been a real exciting spot for me. Kid Rock played last night, which was wonderful for me. And then there's like this nexus of the WWE already involved President Trump, but now it's like WWE has been like, we knew that MMA sort of leans MAGA, but WWE is now leaning full MAGA. We have the Hulkster. Like, the Hulkster spoke at the Republican National Convention, which was exciting for me. And then I know Glenn Jacobs, so I don't know if you know who Glenn Jacobs is. He's Kane from WWE. He is the mayor of Knoxville, Tennessee, which is wonderful. And he's tweeting pictures of himself as a delegate at the RNC with Linda McMahon. And then we've got the Hulkster. All the little Hulkamaniacs taking their vitamins and saying their prayers at the RNC. Let's show this.
But what happened last week when they took a shot at my hero and they tried to kill the next president of the United States?
Yeah, brother.
Enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make America great again.
That was great. That was great. I have nothing more to say there. That was wonderful. It's clear, like, especially in these masculine sports, they do tend to lean conservative. Like, I know Tatanka is conservative, Kane's conservative. If I had to guess, there are quite a few who would say lean conservative based on their religious leanings. Undertaker, Ted DiBiase. Anyway, that was just exciting for me to see. One more from the Hulkster, because I am a true Hulkamaniac from way back in the day.
You know something? I've seen some great tag teams in my time. Hulk Hogan and, ooh yeah, the Macho Man Randy Savage. But you know something? I see the greatest tag team of my life standing upon us, getting ready to straighten this country out for all the real Americans. You know something?
Yeah. That we live in the best timeline currently, don't we? If I had to guess, and I'm not, I don't know if he's ever publicly said, but Hacksaw Jim Duggan, I would guess votes Republican since he did shoot an intruder. And he believes in gun rights, and he's an advocate for the police in the United States. So I'm not sure if he's ever publicly said, but I would guess too. But we live in the best timeline of this intersection of Republican politics and the WWE currently, at least for me. This is the funnest. We've had a heavy few days, and this just feels just fun, because politics doesn't have to be stuffy and boring and insufferable. If you want that, go be a Democrat, go be a liberal, where you could just walk around and scold everybody and tone police everybody for having just a little bit too much fun and telling jokes. our side of the aisle is pretty fun. Okay, let's hit an ad break, and then we'll go into just a couple more Trump things, and then we'll go into some Canadian news.
Folks, it's undeniable that our rights and freedoms are under attack. The Freedom Passport is an easy-to-read, pocket-sized booklet containing the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. There's an app, too. Easily access the Freedom Passport on your phone and compare rights and freedoms from around the world for only $3.99. Visit freedompassport.ca and get your Freedom Passport today.
Okay, great. Let's get into a few more Trump clips from the RNC. Donald Trump paid tribute to Corey Comparator. He's the dad who threw his body on top of his wife and daughter during the assassination attempt. He died. He was standing very near to Trump. Let's show that, because while we should be grateful that Trump survived, let us not forget that 2 people were gravely injured and another person was killed.
But Corey, unfortunately, we have to use the past tense. He was incredible. He was a highly respected former fire chief, respected by everybody. Was accompanied by his wife, Helen, incredible woman. I spoke to her today, devastated, and 2 precious daughters. He lost his life selflessly, acting as a human shield to protect them from flying bullets. He went right over the top of them and was hit. What a fine man he was. But I am very proud to say that over the past few days, we've raised.
Sorry, no, go ahead. Let's go back. I want to hear how much they've raised. Sorry.
For the families of David, James, and Corey, including from a friend of mine, just called up. He sent me a check right here. I just got it. $1 million. From Dan Newland. Thank you, Dan. And again, when speaking to the family, I told them, I said, well, I'm going to be sending you a lot of money, but it can't compensate. They all said the same thing. You're right, sir. We appreciate so much what you're doing, but nothing can take the place in the case of Corey. And the other 2, by the way, they were very, very seriously injured, but now they're doing very well. They're going to be okay. They're going to be doing very well.
And preface that with Joe Biden, who literally doesn't know how to get off a stage or who he's talking to while he's on it. Those are the choices Americans have to make. This guy, this extraordinary individual by I think every measure, or Joe Biden, who should be in some sort of care home. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. I feel like Jill Biden is the real villain here for not intervening and saying, look, he's not competent and we can't do this anymore. He should be just in a care facility somewhere. Honestly, he should be visiting that granddaughter that he doesn't acknowledge, as opposed to, as you saw, if you were paying attention, Trump's granddaughter, who just loves her grandpa deeply and has a wonderful, fun relationship, as kids who are close to their grandparents generally have. Joe Biden fails to acknowledge his granddaughter that Hunter has with that woman. Okay, let's keep going. Trump on energy independence. This is exciting for me as an Albertan, and I'll tell you why as soon as he's done talking.
I make this pledge to the great people of America. I will end the devastating inflation crisis immediately, bring down interest rates, and lower the cost of energy. We will drill, baby, drill. I make this pledge to the...
Okay. I'll tell you why that's exciting is because Donald Trump has always considered American energy independence North American energy independence. What that means is Keystone XL, the pipeline that is basically done right up to the border and done on the other side of the border, will be built across the border. Because that was one of the first things that Trump did when he took office in 2016 was to authorize the construction of Keystone XL. And one of the first things Biden did was kill it. And so that means wonderful things for us here in Alberta and in the West, but also by extension, the rest of Canada. The impact of one pipeline is enormous. The Trans Mountain Pipeline currently is outperforming in terms of GDP the entire British Columbia economy. That's what it means when the Trudeau government does not allow these pipelines to go forward domestically, like Energy East. Think about what that would have done for the Canadian economy. But also when they fail to fight for Canadian energy in Washington. Now, in Alberta, we have basically an ambassador from Alberta in Washington that argues for Alberta. We used to have one until Rachel Notley came into power. One of the first things she did was bring home Rob Merrifield, who was basically our ambassador for Alberta in Washington, especially then when we needed him the most. But she brought him home because she didn't care about Alberta energy. And by extension, if you are in another part of this country, you should care because it helps all. A rising tide floats all boats, especially when we have an equalization structure in this country, which requires Alberta to support the rest of the country. You want us to do well if you want to do well. You like those social programs? Great. Support Alberta energy. But we're doing our best to advocate in Washington with an adversarial government there. And that's going to change. And I'm excited at the prospect of what that means for us here in Alberta and for the rest of you in this country. Think about it. A pro-oil and gas government here in Alberta with a cooperative partner in Washington and a cooperative partner in the federal government, Pierre Poilievre, from my lips to God's ears, may he be the next prime minister. We will have a time of prosperity, the likes of which we have not seen in a very long time. And that's my hope. That's what that drill, baby, drill means for me. One last Trump video, and then we will go into this Joyanne Reid clip.
Greatest movement in the history of our country. Make America great again. When they criticize it, they say, we're going to try and stop MAGA. I said, MAGA is making America great again. What are you going to stop? There's nothing to stop. Then they say, oh, that's right. It's very tough to fight it. And all of the people that did try and fight it have failed. Greatest.
Can't stop MAGA. You just can't. Not now. Especially not now. They literally tried to assassinate MAGA. Failure. And if you can't see Donald Trump for the exceptional human being, whether you like him or not, that's a special kind of personal strength and to be able to do that. But it's also the result of having a social media reality TV president. He knows how important it is to get up and communicate something visually the way he did. But don't forget, he's still up against bumbling Joe Biden. And Joe Biden, like Justin Trudeau, has his apologists in the mainstream media who, and Joe Biden has all of a sudden developed COVID, which, as you know, that's something that all progressive leaders do when they are facing an optic crisis and some opposition, right? Every time somebody said something mean to Justin Trudeau, he got COVID and had to hide away in the cottage. When truckers converged on Ottawa, oh, COVID for the 20th time or whatever. Remember to get your booster. All the vaccines definitely worked. That's why Justin Trudeau got COVID every time somebody looked at him wrong. Sure. But anyways, Joe Biden now has COVID, and I hope he does recover because he is in the age bracket of those who do not do well if they do come down with COVID. But I'm not even sure he has COVID in the same way that I'm not even sure that Justin Trudeau had COVID every time somebody looked at him wrong. Because he is not doing the things that they told us you must do if you have COVID. Because if you don't do those things, you're a grandma killer, right? You're just killing grandma. Joe Biden's bumbling around, shuffling around. Like I said, the Frankenstein monster. Have you ever watched him walk? Like the Frankenstein monster, without a mask. And I'm reliably informed by Joe Biden that if you don't wear a mask when you have COVID, you're just killing everybody. You're just killing everybody. So moving ahead, the apologists, and maybe we can show a clip of Biden shuffling down the stairs of his plane, which is an accomplishment for a man his age anyway, in his condition. But he's doing it in the throes of COVID, they'll have you believe. But his apologists in the mainstream media, including Jen Psaki, who used to be his press secretary, she still remains his press secretary, I suppose, just doing it in another way on the mainstream media, and Joyanne Reid, they are saying that Biden having COVID, if he survives this assassination attempt by a virus, then it's basically the same as Trump surviving a literal gunshot. And we should thus then celebrate the two of them the same way, with the same, they should be respected in the same way, as in this is the same sort of defeat over the enemy. And so I don't know, we should probably erect a memorial, like a war memorial to Joe Biden's survival of COVID, if indeed he has it at all. Let's show this clip.
Question that I have on that. These two men are both elderly. Donald Trump is an elderly man who, for whatever reason, was given 9 seconds to take a iconic photo op during an active shooter situation. Weird situation. We'll figure that out one day. But his survival of that and bouncing right back and going right to his convention is being conveyed in the media world as a sign of strength. This current president of the United States is 81 years old and has COVID. Should he be fine in a couple of days? Doesn't that convey exactly the same thing? That he's strong enough, older than Trump, to have gotten something that used to really be fatal to people his age. So if he does fine out of it and comes back and is able to do rallies, isn't that exactly the same?
It should.
I mean, it's not exactly the same. It's not the same incident, but it's an elderly man coming through out of an illness.
It should.
It should. It should. At first, you can tell Jen Psaki's like, oh, dang, how am I going to answer this one? And she just said, it should. But you can tell there's a point at which she's like, what are you arguing right now? If you carefully watch that video they show of Joe Biden bravely surviving the sniffles, although in fairness, he is old and frail. Like, I think the average age of death for COVID, at least in Alberta for a time, was 82. Joe Biden's 81. So this is a near miss if he survives. And I shouldn't be joking, because he literally could die, because he doesn't even have the physical strength to raise his fist or to wave. Did you see that? He sort of struggles to get his arm up. Donald Trump gets flattened by the Secret Service for his own good, gets his shoes knocked off after being shot in the ear, stands up, physically shakes off the Secret Service, and then like defiantly raises his fist 3 times. Like this, he's like, look, no. Yeah, and the Secret Service, they've got their hands full with Donald Trump. And then Biden, if you show that clip of Joyanne Reid yammering, You can see Biden so physically weak. Like, look at him raise his fist or his hand. The big his thumbs up. It's like he's, oh my God. I just, look how slow he moves, can hardly salute. This is everything, all the energy he has. He's got to stop. He's going up the thing very slow, those stairs. They need a stair lift on Air Force One at this point. You know, like one of those things that the old people sit in and they just sit on it and they ride up the stairs. They need that on Air Force One. And they want us to believe there's nothing wrong with Biden. You can look at that. And he's got to stop like every 5 steps. See, slows way down to get up. This is him shuffling down the stairs. They want us to think that our eyes are lying to us. Like, he will have to, wherever he's going on Air Force One, they've got a bed in there and he needs to go lay down and have an IV of B vitamins or something because he's not doing well. And anyways, totally getting winged in the ear with a gunshot and then shaking off several Secret Service agents to raise your fist in defiance. And by the way, Joy Reid, why he was allowed that time to shake his fist. So what? Now the Secret Service are conspiring to give Donald Trump his optics victory. Is that what you think? They failed in such magnitude that he got shot in the ear. But on the flip side, they're like, oh, we'll make it up to him by letting him raise his fist in victory. They call me a conspiracy theorist. They call Alex Jones a conspiracy theorist. These people are crazy. Like completely crazy. There's some sort of conspiracy of the Secret Service to allow him to raise his fist, when the more likely conspiracy is, why didn't they do anything about the shooter, knowing full well about him for, I don't know, maybe an hour, at least a half an hour, maybe 20 minutes. Just brought his own ladder. Nobody did a damn thing. Anyway, let's hit an ad break and then we'll go into some Canadian craziness, including Seamus O'Regan, Justin Trudeau's groomsman, saying, I've done about enough here. So let's find out more about that and who he's being replaced by.
Canadians are grappling with news blackouts on social media due to the Justin Trudeau Liberal government's Bill C-18. This new piece of legislation demands that social media platforms pay the government for news shared by users, which is an inconceivable task for companies like Meta and Google. So, as a result, they have decided to preemptively block all Canadian news content, including ours at Rebel News. In response to this, we have since teamed up with VPN provider Private Internet Access to ensure that you can continue to access all of our content across a broad range of platforms while also maintaining your privacy. For only $2 a month, you can bypass Trudeau's new censorship laws while you safeguard freedom of speech and continue to get the news that matters to you the most. Visit piavpn.com/rebelnews to take advantage of the 84% discount and 4 months free. As a bonus, PIA has all of its servers located in the United States, not China, and they automatically delete user data from their servers to avoid leaks and government subpoenas for information phishing expeditions. Don't delay. Head over to piavpn.com/rebelnews to stay up to date on the news in Canada and protect your access to it. Don't delay. You don't want to be left behind.
Before we move on to some Canadian news, including one of the most bizarre committee hearings I've ever witnessed in my entire life, and I watch a lot of these things. I watched Randy Boissonnault testifying. So I believe I have the ability to make this judgment. It was like an episode of the plastic surgery show Botched. Like you didn't know what you were looking at. And anyway, you'll see what I'm talking about in a second. But before we move on, I've got a message from our partners at Rumble. Do you rely on big woke corporations and the corrupt medical establishment to keep you healthy? I hope not. Then why would you trust the same globally owned corporations to keep your pet healthy? Have you ever read the label? What's in pet food? It's not what your dog should be eating. Anyway, it's time for us to stop relying on them for anything. They hate us, want to keep us sick, and just want our money. We at Rumble started Positive Health because pets are an extension of our family, and it matters that they get clean, nutrient-filled, vitamin-rich superfoods to stay happy and healthy. Not only is my pet an extension of my family, my dog is an extension of Rebel News, because whenever I'm working in my office, in my little studio here, my dog is laying on the floor under my desk currently. And sometimes my cat makes special appearances, Margaret Scratcher. Let's keep going. That's why we created a range of superfood supplement waffles that your pet will love, packed with natural, healthy ingredients that promote better digestive support, bone health, vision, and immune strength. They're also rich in anti-inflammatories, vitamins, and minerals essential for your furry family members. So head on over to Positive, that's PAWSITIVE.com right now to check out our superfoods and other products. Use code STUDIO to save 15% on your first subscription order. Well, that's very exciting. Let's go into what's been happening in Canadian politics. First things first, Seamus O'Regan, Justin Trudeau's groomsman from his wedding, who has served in a number of portfolios, has decided that he is no longer running in politics. So he's going to finish out his term as the, I forget where he's the MP for, somewhere out east anyways, doesn't even matter. He's the MP for St. John South, Mount Pearl in Newfoundland and Labrador. He's saying that he's not going to seek re-election. He's honored to have served in just about every portfolio because he would get in one, screw it up, and then get shuffled to another one. 3-page statement for those of you who are interested in listening to what Seamus O'Regan has to say about anything. But he's really just proud of his time in cabinet, especially his work during COVID or some baloney like that. Like, these people have no shame. The darkest time in modern Canadian history, and they're like, I was proud to make it darker. Thanks, Seamus. Shameless O'Regan. My friend Seamus has been a pragmatic voice and a relentless advocate around the cabinet table, but to do that work well, you have to sacrifice a lot and ask so much of your family. I respect his decision wholeheartedly. Anyway, Seamus is gone. I'm not sad. I don't think you're sad. He's not one of the brightest bulbs in cabinet. I think he continued to fail upward because his experience in politics was being Justin Trudeau's friend and reading the news that somebody else wrote on CTV's morning show, I believe it was, Canada AM. So he's really good at reading the words that somebody else puts in his mouth and not really good at believing them. And it was tangential nepotism, I guess, that got him all the way into cabinet. And so now he'll take his pension and get his little golden parachute. The problem with that is who we're replacing him with. So the Liberal MP, so Seamus O'Regan was last at Labour. And Gatineau MP Steve McKinnon is replacing him. Now, who's Steve McKinnon? He was recently the interim House leader while Karina Gould was on maternity leave. But McKinnon, we have this clip of McKinnon. I'm going to send it to you, Olivia, so people know who McKinnon is. He's an idiot and an apologist for all sorts of bad behavior. Let me show you who McKinnon is. Olivia. It's in the Slack. Steve McKinnon, during the Arrive scam hearings, wherein Christian Firth, the head of GC Strategies, the company that made the flawed Arrive Can mandatory travel surveillance app, that was so flawed it sent approximately 10,000 innocent Canadians to home confinement, unnecessary quarantine. Don't get me wrong, all of the quarantine was unnecessary, but these guys had met the requirements to not go into COVID quarantine, and they were sent there anyways under threat of $5,000 fines in excess of that per each. And the app was replicated over a weekend for tens of thousands. They took $60 million. They were whining and dining CBSA staff. It's just a big fat mess. There's contracts for work for nothing. The value of the contracts were increased for no reason. It just an absolute procurement scandal. A lot of these people got rich, and GC Strategies wasn't even trying to hide it. They called themselves GC, Government of Canada Strategies. Christian Firth refused to testify, I think, at committee, so they dragged him before the House of Commons to answer questions. And then he said, "I'm sorry, I can't answer questions. I'm too mentally ill." And Stephen McKinnon said, "You guys are big meanies. Let this guy go home. He doesn't have to answer for the alleged fraud, don't sue me, that was allegedly committed against Canadian taxpayers." Go ahead.
Mr. Firth informed the House as to whether he consulted with a medical professional prior to his appearance today regarding answering questions from the House.
Mr. Firth.
Mr. Speaker, yes, I did. I consulted yesterday.
Monsieur l'honorable ministre.
Mr. Speaker, is Mr. Firth comfortable sharing what the doctor told him?
Mr. Firth.
Mr. Speaker, yes, I am. I'm supposed to not participate in any activity that would cause any undue stress to myself, as being diagnosed with having acute mental health flare-ups, actively under therapy, and also on medication.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, was the information about Mr. Firth's medical condition shared with the House of Commons administration?
Mr. Firth.
Sorry, can you answer the question again, please?
Certainly, by all means.
The Honourable, one moment. Just want to make sure the time. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Was the information about Mr. Firth's medical condition shared with the House of Commons administration?
Mr. Firth.
Mr. Speaker, we shared it with the clerk.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, this information is consistent with what was shared with all recognized parties yesterday individually by the law clerk and parliamentary counsel, that Mr. Firth's health is fragile and that a doctor has provided a note recommending that Mr. Firth does not participate in activities such as the questioning today for mental and physical health reasons. Monsieur le Président said,
Mr. Speaker, this information is consistent with what has been communicated yesterday by the Council and to all recognized party that Mr. Firth's health is fragile and that a doctor has provided a note recommending that Mr. Firth do not participate in activities such as the questioning today for mental and physical health reasons.
That Mr. Firth understands that he will have to answer questions and is prepared to do so once his health allows it. I want to be crystal clear. We believe that what happened with the ArriveCan app is unacceptable. We want to assure that all unanswered questions receive answers. That is an important principle of this House. That is why we supported the motion that brings Mr. Firth here today. We want to get to the bottom of this issue, and we want to ensure that committees are respected. Je tiens à être très clair.
I want to be very clear. We consider that what has happened with the ArriveCan app is unacceptable. We want to ensure that all the questions that have been unanswered will get an answer. This is an important principle of the House. That is why we supported the motion that has brought Mr. Firth here today. We want to get to the bottom of the situation, and we want to ensure that the committees are respected.
All recognized parties were individually informed of options to delay the questioning component of today's proceedings until Mr. Firth has been medically cleared to participate, and only the Conservatives refused. On this side of the House, we do not believe that it is appropriate to question Mr. Firth if he is not medically able to participate. We want this to be done in a way that respects the dignity of Parliament, and forcing someone against medical advice to do something that a doctor believes could harm their treatment and recovery is indeed beneath the dignity of this place. Nous voulons que cela se fasse.
He just goes on. And basically, he's acting as the lawyer for this guy, Christian Firth, who made millions and millions of dollars doing just about nothing. He stood up and basically accused the Conservatives of putting Christian Firth's health in jeopardy by forcing him to answer questions about the gajillions of dollars he made off the backs of Canadian taxpayers for doing nothing, and also enriching himself by propping up the surveillance state during COVID. He said it was the big conservative memes. This is who is the new Labour minister, who acted as the lawyer, basically, in the House of Commons for Christian Firth, who probably should be in jail. Okay. Thanks. Great. We're in great hands, as always. Speaking of great hands, as always, I'll give you a little bit of backstory about what happened at a very special summer sitting of the Ethics Committee. For those of you who don't know who Randy Boissonnault is, he is soon to be the former Liberal MP for, I believe it's Edmonton Centre. He likes to meddle in provincial politics. And I hope he never stops, because it makes Albertans hate him more and more all the time. Anyway, he's going to lose. He was an MP, then he lost his seat. And then in 2021, he got his seat back. In 2020, so the story goes, he started, because he has all these connections to the Liberal government, because he was an MP and they fully knew he was going to be the candidate again in Edmonton Centre, he started a company, a PPE import company, that has been plagued since with allegations of arson, fraud, lawsuits, just crooked as the day is long, if you believe the stories, with somebody he met on a plane. Just thought, yep, this guy, he's the guy I got to do business with. We're going to start a PPE import company. Okay. Liberal insiders enriching themselves during the pandemic is nothing new, except then Randy Boissonnault and having crooked business dealings, Frank Baylis, right? Enriching themselves is nothing new. However, the problem is Randy was supposed to put his portion of the company, 50% of it, by the way, into a blind trust and step back from decision making, because he's in a government that was locking people down, forcing them to wear masks in federally regulated industries, and he's busy importing masks. His company was directly benefiting from the decisions he was making in the House of Commons. Big no-no. And so he was supposed to have his company in a blind trust, no decision making. Well, as it turns out, Mr. Randy Boissonnault may have been involved intimately in the decision making. In that there are text messages now between and get this, let's roll back a little. Conservatives are like, Randy Boissonnault is running a PPE company, and his government was voting to lock people down, directly benefiting from the COVID restrictions. The ethics commissioner should at least investigate. The ethics commissioner declined to investigate. Great. Now, that didn't stop the Conservatives from investigating. They got their hands on text messages where it's very clear that this one other partner, Stephen Anderson, I'm not going to say anything. I'll just let your eyes do the judging for yourselves. Where he is in partner meetings with somebody named Randy. Somebody named Randy was in Vancouver at the same time as Randy Boissonneau was in Vancouver for a cabinet retreat. Randy was in a decision-making position at this company well after he would have had to recuse himself in 2021. Okay. And at first, Stephen Anderson told, I think it was a Global News reporter, oh, the Randy I'm talking about works in logistics. And then now he's saying, actually, I lied to that reporter, but definitely believe me now that that Randy was actually an autocorrect mistake. But he never says what he was supposed to be writing. What on earth could have autocorrected on his iPhone to Randy 9 separate times and no effort to correct himself? I mean, it's just so unbelievable. And anyways, I want you to take a looky-loo at what we're dealing with here. This is Larry Brock, Conservative MP. He's talking to Randy Boissonneau's admitted liar business partner, Stephen Anderson, and telling him just how unbelievable his testimony at committee is. Go ahead.
Wait for 5 minutes. Go ahead, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Anderson, you expect this committee to believe that you autocorrected at least 8 times. We have text message.
Sorry, this is Dane Lloyd. That's the Dane Lloyd clip. So Dane Lloyd, Conservative MP from Alberta, we can show that. Dane Lloyd, he's not buying this autocorrect excuse. Let's just start that from the beginning. Okay, sorry. We'll start with Randy, or we'll start with Larry Brock. Sorry, just some confusion there. It's hard to get all the people being critical of this absolute liar admitted. We'll start with, is this Larry Brock? Yeah? Olivia?
Mr. Anderson, you are a self-admitted liar. You lack any credibility whatsoever. It really begs the question, how much did Minister Boissonneau pay you for your silence?
Mr. Chairman,
How much did he pay you?
I have not had no communication with Minister Boissonneau.
You've only had one other partner in your entire operation with GHI and GHS. You've confirmed that is Randy Boissonneau. The word partner in all of these email exchanges was never auto-corrected, was it? Was it?
There was no email communication.
I'm talking text messages. The word partner in text messages was never auto-corrected, was it?
It was not referring to Randy Boissonneau.
You've had unusual contract wins. You've had a half a dozen lawsuits, nearly $8 million in court-ordered debts, civil allegations of fraud, a fire 16 days after at a warehouse by 3 arsonists. Yesterday, we learned you got into business with a Dominican drug dealer. Nobody believes you. No one at this committee believes you. Canadians don't believe you. Fess up. The gig is up. The only other Randy that was auto-corrected, according to you, 9 times was, in fact, Minister Randy Boissonneau. Admit it.
Mr. Chairman, it was not Randy Boissonneau.
Who was it?
As I have said at my opening statement, I am happy to provide the individual's name in question.
Not good enough. Gowie's understanding, according to their communications with you.
Mr. Brock, time's up.
I don't know about you, but every time I try to write liberal government contracts, my phone autocorrects it to corruption. Like, it's so stupid. It was just autocorrect 9 times talking about partner meetings. And the guy admitted in committee that he lied to a reporter and said, oh, Randy, yeah, that's the logistics guy. Definitely not Randy Boissonneau, the partner in this company. Just so unbelievably stupid. It's like watching a kid who you catch doing something bad and they're like, oh, that's not at all what I was doing. I was doing like where they don't have the maturity to realize that you're smarter than them. And this is where we're at. He just thinks he can lie his way out of this. Lied before, lying now. Didn't think that he would be called to testify in an unusual summer session of the ethics committee. And here we are. And I'm just going to let you know, Steven Anderson used to be a hockey coach of some kind, like a conditioning coach. Can you believe that? Would you send your kid to be conditioned by that person? You know what? If I had to describe him, I would say human beings in a million years, if we evolve to be this genderless creature that with long arms and long legs, sort of like those tall grays, no, short grays, the tall whites, aliens. Grays are short, whites are tall. If you, with like ultra long limbs and really bizarre shaped heads and genderless features, and we just sort of procreated by thinking about it and like sort of split in half. Like if this is the end stage of human evolution, I think, if I had to describe him. Like if we were able to like go ahead in time a million years and see what humans had evolved to be, starting with our caveman ancestors and going ahead in time to whatever we end up being, I fear we might look like that. I do. Yay! It's not a statement on his credibility. I just think that's an unusual choice of look. That's all. I mean, the same could be said for me. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I know that. I know it. I have unruly hair and I have severe features and I have lots of tattoos, and some of you don't like them, and that's okay. And I'll take those criticisms as they come. But that is just a real bizarre choice of look for a man. Ellie Cantelnanton. He got a picture of Steven Anderson from the other side. Minister Randy Boissonneau's former business partner Steven Anderson showed up to the ethics committee in style today with a $2,500 ladies Louis Vuitton bag. We also know from Global News that Anderson loves Dior shoes. They call him Steven Dior Anderson. Those expensive pandemic contracts seem quite nice. Dollar bills, y'all. Can we zoom in on his shoes? Because this is, I can't. This guy was a hockey coach, you guys. Hockey coach. Take my ambitious young man and turn him into an elite level athlete, Steven Dior Anderson. Okay. Okay. Give me a Sutter any day. Give me a rough looking Sutter any day. One last clip. Dane Lloyd from Alberta, Conservative MP. He's not buying this autocorrect nonsense. First, you lied and said it was the Director of Logistics, Steven Dior Anderson, end state of human evolution. And anyways, now it's autocorrect Randy, which is also equally unbelievable because they never stopped to correct it once. Like when I send some autocorrect mistake, like if I'm trying to swear and it in a text and it comes back shot, I'll stop and send a text saying, you know, like what the actual word should be. And like I never mean to say fracking instead of the word that I'm trying to say. Okay, Samsung, but I always make it a point to correct it so that I'm clear. I would never leave the inaccuracy just hanging in there, especially when you're communicating business dealings. But Steven Dior Anderson wants us to believe that. So let's hear from Dane Lloyd.
Mr. Lloyd for 5 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Anderson, you expect this committee to believe that you autocorrected at least 8 times. We have text message evidence that you used the term Randy at least 8 times. You expect us to believe that you autocorrected 8 times without correcting yourself even once?
That is the truth, yes.
Now, do you think that the Gowie group would be wondering to themselves who this Randy fellow is if there was no Randy involved at your company? You're sending all these text messages referencing a Randy. Why didn't the Gowie group ever ask who's this Randy person that we're dealing with if it was an autocorrect?
The Gowie group has in our entire relation from I think it was, we started communicating in August of 2022, right up until just this past Friday with the Gowie Group. They were not involved with any communication or linkage to Randy Boissonnault.
And yet it was their understanding that this Randy Boissonnault was a public official. Is this other Randy that you're referencing, the person you won't name, are they a public official?
They are not, no.
Okay. Now, you've already admitted to this committee, to the country, that you lied to Global News when you told them that there was a Randy who was the head of logistics. And you expect this committee to believe that you had 8 autocorrects that went uncorrected? Why should we believe you now?
I'm a private citizen. I have nothing to hide or protect. I consider Randy Boissonnault a friend, a colleague of mine that I had met a handful of times. We've never hung out publicly. If Randy Boissonnault was involved, I would tell you. He has not been involved since September.
And yet we've been here for 3 months. You could have put this to rest, as my colleague said, quite easily 3 months ago and told us it was an autocorrect. This turmoil that you speak of, that you have gone through, that you do not want to put this unnamed individual through, is entirely a creation of your obfuscation of the facts, of your hiding the identity of this person. If you had said the name of this person a couple of months ago, there would have been no turmoil. So why did you hide this? You said on the phone when you got the call from Global News saying, who's the other Randy? You panicked. What would you have had to panic about if you had nothing to hide? You just said you had nothing to hide. You would tell us. Why didn't you tell Global News then the truth? What did you have to hide? Why did you panic?
Mr. Chairman, it wasn't about panicking about Global News. I had been told and contacted by Global News previously that Global News was working on a story in relation to ongoing litigation with Global Health Imports, that the linkage between Minister Boissonnault, that he was still listed as a partner within the Alberta filings, that it had not been removed, but it was removed from the federal filings. And based on the litigation that was going on with the Gowie Group, on our advice of counsel, we were instructed not to speak to them.
You panicked, but you could have just easily given the media an easy answer. It's not Randy Boissonnault. It's not anyone named Randy. In fact, it's this other person. But you led us on this merry chase for 3 months, not merry for yourself, unfortunately, but you're the cause of your own misfortune here, sir. With that, I will give my last minute to Mr. Brock. Thank you.
Is that wild? At least, you know what? I watched some very boring committee hearings. At least this one was interesting. Like, I was glued to my computer watching this just how visually compelling it was to look at. Somebody has clearly watched one too many YouTube makeup tutorials on bronzer, because there's heavy overuse of bronzer. And I don't know what was going on with his hairline there. It was like he colored it in because it's receding, obviously, as it tends to do. Not everybody has the gun proceeding hairline like me, where every year your hair gets closer to your eyebrows. The men in my family are quite lucky. But his, it looks like it was colored in with a Sharpie or something. I don't know. You know what I did learn from that committee hearing? Money can't buy class. That's for sure. Or credibility. I think, is that everything, Olivia? We're way past time, and I know. Oh, okay, perfect. Let's go to a couple of chats from you. We've got one from Aaron Burton, 32. Happy Friday, Sheila and team. Missed you last week. Could you please do your impression, as we all know, of Freeland again? It's priceless. And I understand, and you understand, we all understand that this is a priceless impersonation, and I only do it on the live stream because it is so super annoying to my family. Also, Trudeau should follow O'Regan's lead. Yeah, but what's he gonna do? Like the shine has come off that little marble on the international stage. I think in another time, Justin Trudeau probably thought that he could join Freeland at the World Economic Forum. But that's not a thing anymore because, as you know, And as we all know, that nobody likes him there anymore either. So I don't know what's going to happen to him. I think he thinks that the Rideau Cottage is his. Like he sort of grew up there. Maybe could you imagine? You're going to have to evict him like a squatter when he's unelected because he thinks that that's his home forever. Get out of there. Okay, let's keep going. We've got Weebly Pug, $10. Ezra has said our PM, Canada's, could extend his rule by invoking certain provisions of the law. Do you know what that is? I mean, he could change the election date if he wanted to. When you're in power, propped up by the NDP, you could do a lot of things. I don't know what specific provisions that Ezra was talking about. I do know that because of the way our system is structured, a foreign actor could flood our party system with party memberships, especially the Liberals, because they don't actually require any monetary investment. So it's really making the bar easy. And you can be a foreign national. You don't have to be a citizen to become a Liberal Party member. And so you would vote on who the next leader is. And so basically they could install a leader into the Liberal Party. And that, let's say, CCP installed person could become the Prime Minister of Canada. It's very, very scary. All right, let's keep going. Cocteau gives us $2 and says Gavin McInnes for Prime Minister. You know what? Gavin has moved to the United States because it's freer for him to live in New York than it is in Quebec or anywhere in Canada for that matter. So, like, I think Gavin grew up in Ottawa. And it's just, it makes more sense for him to live in the United States in very progressive, very unfree New York State than it does to live in Canada, although be funny. I mean, in an ideal world, it'd be funny, but I'm not sure if Gavin wants to even come home to Canada. Why would he, really? At least not right now. Okay, it looks like we've got another special message from our partners at Rumble. Who is in control of Canada's, or sorry, we don't have nukes. Who's in control of America's nukes? Is it bumbling Joe Biden? Meanwhile, we have Russia ships off the coast of Florida and full-blown wars in Ukraine and Israel. The world is at its most unstable point since World War II, except now with nuclear weapons. The stakes are 10 times higher. How do people like you and I stay safe? Oh, we're going to talk about prepping. Every prepper needs to have Radio Guard ACE, ASE, the only FDA-approved drug to treat radioactive fallout. Only the feds have it until now. That's why I partnered with 5G Free, the only company in the world that has a supply of Radio Guard ACE and the ability to prescribe it prophylactically. Get their radiation emergency kit with Radio Guard ASE, potassium iodide, Zofran, and a Geiger counter. And there's simply no other tool in your arsenal to protect against a radioactive threat. Go to 5gfree.com/studio and use code STUDIO to save 10%. I have a radiation kit, and so do you. That's 5gfree.com/studio. Code STUDIO. Geiger counters are fun. You'd be surprised what contains latent radioactive stuff in your life. Olivia, is that everything? Are we good? Okay, great. Well, guys, that's the show. Sorry about no show last week. I was, as I said, helping to identify and train the future of Canadian journalism, the youngsters who will take over the mainstream media and send it to the dustbin of history where it belongs. So thanks for your patience. Thanks for coming back this week to do the show with us. Thanks to everybody who works behind the scenes at Rebel News. to bring you the show whenever you want to watch it, wherever you want to watch it. Special thanks to Olivia. I put her on the spot today with a few clips, and I know it's hard to find those things on live TV. Thanks to everybody who engaged in the lively chit chat, and to our friends at Rumble who continue to partner with us, and to all of you who chipped in a few bucks to keep the lights on. We couldn't do it without you. We'll never take a penny from Justin Trudeau, and how could we hold him to account if we ever did? That's the show for today. And as my friend David Menzies always says, even when he and I go to a nudist colony on a story, which was a really weird experience last week, stay sane.
What do you think about the attempted assassination on Saturday?
Little push. They had that kid. I don't even think he had good ammunition. Okay, just to let him know. Just to let him know. They could have killed him. They don't need him anymore. Now they got J.D. Vance, mini Trump, Trump Jr. And of course they were going to blame it on the Democrats. That worked for the Nazis in 1933 when they burned down the Reichstag. Blame it on the communists. They won.
What's the mask for? For COVID or for personal protection?
Personal protection.
Who are you scared of?
Feds.
Feds? Fair enough. What do you think about the assassination attempt of Donald Trump the other day?
He got a sick ear piercing.
What was there, like an actual shooting going on, or that didn't even happen?
Won't say anything on that.
What do you think about the Trump supporters that were killed on Saturday?
That's terrible. But what were they doing there?